Text Amendment 03, 2015, and Text Amendment 04, 2015. We will vote on them separately, but we will have the public hearing on all 4 items at one time. Okay? Mr. Bencham.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if you will recall, you had your first reading on these text amendments at your previous board meeting. The genesis of these text amendments is the Route 639 Farmers Market, and we've discussed this previously. They have a situation where the current ordinance limits the number of days and weeks that they can hold the farmers market during the summer. As part of that process, we had to actually go in and clean up some of the definitions in the ordinance, some other sections in the ordinance, and actually add seasonal events in the B1 and planned mixed-use development districts, because we've had similar events like that in those districts before. So we felt that it was appropriate to take their request, clean up the ordinance to allow for the use they want, but allow those same uses where we have similar requests for uses in those districts as well. And in a nutshell, that's what the 4 text amendments would do tonight. It would clean up the definitions, it would expand, increase the number of days and weeks a year in which these events could be held, and it would add it to 2 additional zoning districts, the B1 and the planned mixed-use development districts. With that, I'll address any questions that the board may have.
Okay, do board members have questions prior to the opening of the public hearing? Okay, seeing no one with questions, I will open the public hearing for Text Amendment 01, 2015, an ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of Caroline County by amending Article 2, Section 2, definitions to 1, repeal the definition for temporary uses, and 2, add a definition for seasonal events. Also for Text Amendment 02, 2015, an ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of Caroline County by repealing Article 4, Rural Preservation, Section 3, C, turkey shoots or other temporary uses, and adding Sections 3C, yard sales, and Section 3D, seasonal events. The purpose of this amendment is to add yard sales and seasonal events as a permitted temporary use to include guidelines for duration and number of events. Text Amendment 3, 2015, an ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of Caroline County by amending Article 9, business, to add paragraph 28, seasonal events. The purpose of this amendment is to add seasonal events as a permitted temporary use to include guidelines for duration and number of events. And finally, Text Amendment 04, 2015, an ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of Caroline County by amending Article 9, Division 3, Planned Mixed-Use Development, Section 2-1, to add paragraph L, seasonal events. The purpose of this amendment is to add seasonal events as a permitted temporary use to include guidelines for duration and number of events. Are there persons who would like to speak regarding any of these or all of these text amendments? You may come forward at this time.
Sorry for coming up beforehand.
That's okay.
Amy Olberg, Madison District, co-manager of the Route 639 Farmers Market. And to bring this tonight, I want to thank Mike Fincham, who thought outside of the box and helped us get it started last week. It's been a huge impact to the community in the Madison District, but we've also reached across the county, and there's many Bowling Green vendors who come over and participate and even shop. So thank you. Thank you to Mr. Seeley. I brought it to you as a beekeeper, begging to be able to sell honey longer than 14 weeks, and you understood my plight and helped rewrite the wording. So thank you. I think it's a good testament to reaching out across the county, across the aisle, to different people to come together for the common good of the county. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding either of these text amendments? Come forth at this time.
Hi, Tammy Anderson, Western Caroline. I am a co-manager with Amy, and I'm not as eloquent as she is. So ditto on everything that she did mention. I appreciate the consideration in this matter.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak regarding these text amendments?
Hi, I'm Claire DeSantis. I am an artisan vendor at the market, and I also represent Miss Allison. I'd like to thank you all for your work in this matter. I do support this wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding these text amendments? Again, is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding these text amendments? Finally, is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding these text amendments? Seeing no one else with the desire to speak, I will close the public hearing at this time and ask board members if you have questions or concerns for Mr. Fincham. Any questions? If not, we can entertain a motion to...
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry.
No, I don't have any questions. I was going to make a motion because I think that, if anything, they do a service for the people of the county, as well as, the vendors selling their produce and things that they provide. It also provides a service to the people that go there and purchase, the ones of us that don't want to get out and work gardens and raise the produce. And so I appreciate you all for what you do with the farmers market, and you've done a great job with it. So I appreciate it a great deal. I'd like to make a motion to approve text 01-2015.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second that we would approve text amendment 01-2015 as presented. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve text 02-2015.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we approve text amendment 02-2015 as presented. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, text 03-2015, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we would approve text amendment 03-2015 as presented. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries as presented.
Chairman,
And text amendment 04.
I'd like to make a motion to approve text amendment 04-2015.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we approve text amendment 04-2015 as presented. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. That takes us to unfinished business. Agenda item number 5 is the continued discussion of the increased liability option for VACORP cyber risk policy. Okay, if you would come forward, sir. Okay, Mr. Carey.
Yeah, good evening. It's good to see all of you again. I understand you have some questions. Cyber liability, I'm sure you've seen it a lot in the news about different types of events that are occurring with data intrusion, stealing of data, different types of uses of data, and so forth. We've been monitoring this for a couple of years now. 2 years ago, we included some base coverage in your document at no additional charge. So you've had coverage for this for a couple of years. There's 2 parts to the coverage. There's third-party liability, and the third-party liability covers you for damages that may occur as a result of somebody's data being stolen. It covers you if any copyrighted or other types of information shows up on your website without approval or getting the proper documentation. It covers you for any regulatory defense or legal expenses that would result from, say, a state or a federal type of regulatory action. And then the other part of the coverage is first-party coverages that deal with if you have to bring in a forensic computer specialist to try to figure out what's going on with your systems after an event, if you need to bring in public relations type information to get your information out on this to the public. deals with required notification expenses if you have a breach. And understand that a breach could be something as simple as somebody losing a laptop that doesn't have encrypted data on it. And even if you can't identify whether the computer's ever been turned on by somebody else, that's considered a breach, and you need to send out certain notifications. You can ask Accomack County about that one. That's happened to them. So we included a lot of base coverage. So we put in a $500,000 limit for the third-party liability, and we put in a $75,000 limit for the notifications and crisis management and those types of things. And then we capped the amount of coverage for the entire pool for the year for $5 million. So essentially, we could handle about 10 events a year where we don't need to collect any additional funds to provide that coverage to all of the members at large. This past year, we started looking into the availability of providing individual coverage to localities that were interested in having their own coverage and not relying on this kind of group policy for the entire group. So you would be able to get some increased liability coverage and some increased notification, crisis management types of expenses and things like that. I will tell you that most of the large localities have started purchasing this. We have done some work with Fairfax County on this issue. They are buying some additional coverage. Stafford County is buying some additional coverage. A lot of the larger localities. And there's a lot of incidences against schools and having that data stolen, so a lot of schools have started purchasing this coverage. I'm going to go at this two different ways with you to give you my opinions on this. My opinions on this are you probably have a lot of sovereign immunity for the third-party liability. But my only hesitation on that issue is there is no case law on this stuff. There's no case law. So if you're asking me whether you have sovereign immunity or not, my gut tells me I've been doing this for 22 years in Virginia, and my gut tells me that you would be held to a gross negligence standard and that it would be difficult for somebody to pursue this against you on the third-party side. My brain tells me I have no specific case to reference or other types of information to tell you whether or not that's going to happen or not. When you look at insurance, you buy insurance based off of what could happen. You don't buy it based off the events of the past. The one side of me would say caution dictates maybe buying a little extra coverage isn't the worst thing in the world. I have no evidence to suggest that this is something that's of an absolute urgent nature for local governments to be doing. We were asked to do it by certain members. We put this program together. We think it's good. The part that we really felt like we benefited from and that you'll benefit from regardless of whether you buy it or not is when we put this program together, we actually gained access to vendors on claims handling, crisis management, legal, public relations, all of those types of things that our staff can't really handle on their own. We've handled one notification claim in 22 years. If we were to get a real kind of event where there was real material data stolen, my staff wouldn't be able to handle that. So gaining access to these specialty vendors by offering this product was something that was really attractive for us. So you'll benefit from that whether you purchase additional coverage or not. I wish I had more to offer on it. I really have one example so far that's really a government type, kind of liability example. The one thing that we are watching right now is there is a federal case in Louisiana that we've been watching where they have kind of lowered the bar for people being able to prove that they have damages. That's making it a little bit easier for, if somebody steals my data today, right now I have to prove that I have damages, and I really would be difficult for me to prove I have damages, right? My credit card would reimburse me for that. What are my actual damages? It would be difficult for me to prove that. Apparently, there's a case going on right now that's getting ready to go to a federal appeals court on that, but we're watching that to see if it's going to be easier for people to get access. So we're paying attention to it. This is kind of new out there for us, but we feel like it's our responsibility to continue to try to keep everybody aware of what's going on and make things available from a coverage and service perspective that we think our members could benefit from now or at some point in the future. So we'll keep your staff advised on this as we continue to move forward. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, I just said a couple. I don't know if other board members do. I'm sure they may. But the sovereign immunity, my understanding, and you did allude to that somewhat, but there is no case out there right now that would make us think that sovereign immunity would not protect us in such a case if we had an issue beyond the coverage that we already have.
As of right now, I'm not aware of any third-party liability case that has been made against any local government in Virginia. And since we cover 400 local governments, counties, schools, and various authorities, I'm certain that if there was one, I would know about it. Okay. So to my knowledge right now, we've only handled a required breach notification, and I don't have any knowledge that anything has occurred in this state other than that.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the server level firewall that we have in place now? My understanding is that protects us against, to some degree, from breaches and other.
Well, I'd have to look at how you're handling that. I don't know much. I'm not an IT guy. I do know that there are certain types of mandatory or really not mandatory, but recommended levels of protection that you would put on your servers to protect outsiders from coming in. Right. One of the problems that we see right now on the IT side is if you're using any third-party vendors for any of this, typically third-party IT contracts limit the liability to the value of the contract. So if you have a internal person and have some outside contracts for people to provide assistance to them, you probably aren't going to be able to go to them if a claim occurs, and if you are able to go to them, you're only going to be able to go to them probably on a limited basis. I'd have to see if you have any third-party vendor contracts, what they say, but in all likelihood, you're only going to be able to go after them up to the value of what the contract is. That's typically how those are worded. So that's really one of the problems that we see with how that's handled right now.
Okay, board members have other questions. Mr. Thomas?
And I guess back to yours, Mr. Taylor, or you said our server firewall, it does as much protection as a screen door. It's going to keep out gnats, flies, but anything big is going to walk right through it. So that's another issue. But Chris, my question was, and we had some discussion, I don't know if you saw our discussion from our last meeting that's in our packet. If a hacker breaks into our server, grabs all of our personal data, they now have my address, date of birth, social security number, that's enough to be me. So they now go out and open up all sorts of bills and whatever in my name, which they probably couldn't do. But if that happens, now I can't sue the county based on what you just said because the county's going to have sovereign immunity.
We believe that to be the case. We're not certain, but we believe that to be the case.
That's a thought. Now, I'm going to then have to prove I have damages in order to be reimbursed from this $500,000 policy that we have, right? That's the way it works?
You wouldn't necessarily have to. You would have to prove damages to be compensated. The county is going to be obligated when they find out that information is stolen to notify everybody that they believe information was stolen. So you're going to bear that expense. So
Right.
we're going to send you a letter and tell you your data was stolen. And then if you see anything, we're probably going to be required to monitor your credit card activity or your
It'd be
credit
really-
report.
yeah, credit activity period.
We're probably, now that's not really damages. Damages would be you spending a bunch of time and spending money and pain and
Right.
suffering and lost wages and other things that occur for you to be able to get your identity back or to recover whatever needs to be recovered or so on and so forth. So
And
the damages are the above and beyond costs.
Right, and there's some cases where that has taken years for a person to repair their credit.
Correct.
And a lot of other things, because once you get stopped, you could have a warrant out for you. If I get stopped for speeding, I've got a warrant out for me because I didn't pay whatever
Correct.
bill before. That's going to be covered? I mean,
The cost,
Scott's going to take, or the sheriff's there now, the sheriff stopped me for speeding. He sees that I'm not really the person, or there's some difference in my identity, whatever, due to that hack. So now I'm going to visit the sheriff's facility for a while. You're going to be responsible for that because I'm going to call my lawyer, right?
theoretically, I would only be responsible for any direct first-party costs from that. The liability for you having to spend a night or two in jail or anything like that, that's where we think there might be some sovereign immunity unless there is any gross negligence.
Okay,
Meaning
let me repeat that to see if it sounds the same when I say it. The county gets hacked.
Correct.
I suffer, or anybody that works for the county, suffers some issue with their identity being lost. Maybe it's law enforcement. Maybe they were going to buy a new car and now they can't get it. And you're saying that you believe that person would have no recourse because the county has sovereign immunity?
I believe the only recourse would be any direct cost related to monitoring your credit report or any direct costs of things that you actually had to do to recover your identity would be covered on that first party, that $75,000 limit.
Right.
I believe that would be covered, but I think anything that you would sue for, like, let me use an automobile claim as easy. I hit you with my car, and you have $1,000 in medical bills.
Right.
Well, I don't have sovereign immunity for that, so you're going to be able to sue me for damages, which is pain and suffering, loss of consortium, various things
Right.
like that. So even though you only had $1,000 in medical bills, I might have to pay you $4,000 or $5,000 to settle your claim for the other pain and suffering the otherwise. What I'm saying on this is if the sovereign immunity applies, I'm only giving you the $1,000. You're not going to be able to get the $4,000. You're only going to be able to get the $1,000. So if your costs associated are $1,000, you're going to get $1,000. But if you try to sue me for an extra $5,000 for all your pain and suffering and inconvenience and nuisance and all of that, we don't think you're going to get that. We just think you'll get the $1,000, and we'll pay the $1,000. But if you get sued for it, this policy will defend the county.
But I mean, what we're talking about really is we're talking about county employees or people that tried to become county employees. They're the ones who are going to be damaged. Well, yeah, that's true. The whole county is basically out there, so it just doesn't seem quite right.
What's the cost for this policy update?
You know what? I actually didn't bring. Did you have that, Alan? I
We
actually
have
didn't
that.
bring the cost with me.
Additional $1 million limit is $7,500. $2 million limit is $10,000.
Yeah,
And $3 million
12.5.
limit is $12,000.
Yeah.
Could I ask
That's
a
correct.
question?
Yes.
I was curious about the, in the packet here, it talks about crisis management event expenses, and it talks about security breach notification expenses.
Yeah.
And it says both of those are subject to a $75,000 sublimit.
Correct.
Does that $75,000 limitation go up if they purchase the higher
Correct.
coverage?
That goes to $250,000.
Because that's not in here. Okay.
That one goes. The third-party liability coverages go to $1 million or $2 million or $3 million.
Right, but that's the one we don't think we need.
Yeah,
What
and
we
then the
need
other
is
one
the
now.
$75,000.
We got that question from Albemarle County and schools, where they did not feel like they needed the third-party liability limits. And since this is the first year that we've been offering the coverage, we've been getting feedback just like what you just provided. So we have just recently made the decision that if people just want to increase that coverage, the crisis management and notification expenses, and get their own coverage for that, that will allow them to do that at a fraction of the cost. Like I'd have to go back and price it depending on your size, but usually we're doing that in the $2,000 to $3,000 range rather than paying the increase. So we are making that. We haven't made that available. We haven't advertised or provided any information on that because that just came up about 3 or 4 weeks ago from Albemarle and Arlington had wanted that. So we are making that available on we'll make that available to everybody in the pool at renewal next year. But if you're interested in that now, we're perfectly fine doing that as an optional kind of interim thing as we continue to see how this progresses over time.
Yeah, that'd be great. They might like to see the pricing on that.
It's
Okay, so
definitely under 3,000. It's
Okay.
definitely no more than 3,000 for that.
And we would go from 75,000 to 200,000 or 250?
That's right. You would still have the $500,000 third-party liability limits capped at the $5 million for the entire pool, but then you would get your own $250,000 crisis management and expense limit, the regulatory defense, that stuff.
Okay.
What happens if the pool limit is reached? What happens if the pool limit is reached? Does it just go down pro rata, so you have maybe only 400,000, or is it first come, first served, or is there an additional premium sent out to everybody to pay? Or?
There's not an additional premium, but basically once we would reach $5 million in payments for claims that occurred in a single fiscal year, we would just cease paying. It just would cease paying. Okay. We don't see that really as a major likelihood, but it's, I guess, theoretically.
No, I don't either. I was just curious. Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas, do you have another question?
I'm having a hard time with the whole thing because I don't think the sovereign immunity, that protects the county.
Correct.
Which theoretically protects the taxpayers. But theoretically, the taxpayers are the ones with all their data out on the web, so they're the ones in danger, and if they suffer a loss, they can't sue the county, which the county couldn't take care of its insurance policy. So we're really not protecting the people that are at risk. Are we?
I mean, sovereign immunity is an interesting thing in Virginia. If you have it, you're required to use it. The purchase of insurance doesn't waive it.
No, so most lawsuits that are defended by sovereign immunity defenses are brought by citizens of the locality. Somebody falls on a sidewalk, breaks their leg, whatever. Car wrecks, fire engine wrecks, school bus wrecks. They're all.
But I would think it fair for a citizen to sue the county if the county allowed their data to be stolen and used.
I think they can sue.
Anybody can sue. They're not going to necessarily win. There's still a sovereign immunity defense as long as you've taken reasonable precautions to keep the data from being stolen. Somebody could break into the treasurer's office and steal a lot of that data too. Just physically. They don't have to do it on a computer.
Well, it's just worrisome because I'm on that side and the IRS just got hacked. So if they can hack the IRS, they can hack anybody.
Yeah, and you haven't seen them getting sued yet by a citizen. I mean, I'm just saying, there's no law. There's no law on it.
I mean, sovereign immunity is an interesting thing right now. I've seen, there was a lawsuit against the sheriff in Loudoun County that on a tasering that 10 years ago wouldn't even have blinked.
It's a highly factual defense.
Yeah.
And it depends so much on the facts and circumstances that unless you have a case in point, it's really hard to predict what will happen in a sovereign immunity case, I think.
Okay, as of now, and there are questions. I don't know if other board members still have questions. If it's not something that we have to make a decision on tonight, if you would like more time to maybe discuss this on more of a one-on-one basis. We could probably arrange for you to be able to do that if that will help to make a decision. And then we could come back in our next meeting, given the information that we've already heard, unless you're ready to make unless the majority of the board feels like you're ready to make a decision. And I don't see, board members seem to have additional questions. So at this point, Chris, thank you so much for your information. We could table this for now and give board members an opportunity to do a little bit more research and maybe come back with a recommendation at another meeting.
We're not in need of a decision tonight. This is something that the county can add or do whenever it feels like it wants to. I'll send some additional information to staff on the first party pieces so that you can see how it would break down between the third party and the first party pieces from a cost perspective, and you can look at it that way. If you need us to come back or answer any more additional questions, I thought about bringing some examples, but all of the examples are, Target, and, Caroline County's just not Target. You're not going to lose business. There's not business interruption. There's just a lot of things that just don't happen here. So there's just nothing really great to share other than it's there. Okay. And everybody knows it.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Chris. We can continue this discussion for another meeting. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. That takes us to special exception 03-2014 Commonwealth Fairs and Events owner applicant. Good evening, ma'am.
Thank you all. Well, I believe in your packet, after the June 30th meeting, I'll update you very quickly on some of the things that transpired after that meeting. Discussion that night on opposition to fireworks, lots of questions about the RV rally piece and regulations within and how it would be monitored and kind of reporting and staging and setup. So after that meeting and the issue basically was tabled, I've talked to as many of you as I can to answer questions, but we also held a community meeting last week with Supervisor Underwood and our neighbors of the Meadow Event Park property. Listened to a lot of concerns about the fireworks piece, and I made the decision that night just to pull it off the table. I felt like there was too much sentiment against it, and the real issue for us and for me and my new role at the Meadow is to keep the Meadow's business moving forward, and the RV rally piece that's before you tonight is far more important to me. It's important that we work with our neighbors, and I think we had a great meeting, and as what you have in front of you tonight addresses some of their concerns about quiet times. I also will point out that I had the Virginia Department of Health, Julie Henderson, who is the director of the Division of Food and Environmental Services, on the grounds today looking at this effort, and spent about 2 hours with her, and anything we do has to first be approved by the Department of Health. So for any RV rally that we wanted to stage and produce at the property, we have to produce a plan in writing with all of the I's dotted and T's crossed to the Department of Health, and then also go through the county layers. So I believe that the proposal that's on the table tonight, to be fair to the property and to give us a chance to move forward and also address some of the concerns of the neighbors with respect to security and quiet times. I'd be happy to answer any further questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Board members, did you have questions, or Mr. Underwood, would you like to address?
If there are any comments, I'll say mine.
Okay, any board comments regarding the special exception for Commonwealth Fairs and Events? Seeing no one.
Mr. Chairman, I want to certainly thank Maureen for having the meeting and the community people that came out. What we were able to do was take a look and really see how business and community can come together and work out a solution. And I certainly appreciate her willingness to sit down with us and discuss and look at it from the other side of the fence. It was a good meeting. We're looking at having additional meetings as we move forward and State Fair and Metal Event Park continues to grow. We're looking forward to assisting you in growing. With that said, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve special exception 03-2014.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we would approve special exception 03-2014 Commonwealth Fairs and Events on an applicant as presented.
With these, yeah, I'm sorry, Mike.
With these conditions, and specifically for the special exception 5, which is camping events.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, will you amend your motion to include those conditions and special
Yes, sir,
exception
Mr. Chairman. With the conditions of the special exception, so noted in Mr. Fincham's information to us.
Okay, Mr. Black, I believe you seconded.
Yes, that's second.
Okay, so it's been moved and properly second that we would approve special exception 03-2014 as presented with the additional conditions as presented. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
That takes us to agenda item number 7, an update on Richmond 2015 UCI Road World Cycling Championships.
I'm outnumbered. Come on, Melton, get up here. Mr.
Good
Chairman.
evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. I'll just give a quick overview of what you've been included in your packet. I believe the sheriff wants to talk to you about one specific issue, and Stacy, Lieutenant Carey, can go over the law enforcement end. We're about 31 days out to the start of the World Championship cycling race here in Richmond. September 23rd will be the day that affects Caroline County with a men's elite time trial. That's 32 miles extending from Kings Dominion all the way back down to downtown Richmond. Some things for Caroline County, things you need to know. Beginning September 21st, VDOT will be putting out 21 variable message signs, both in our county and around 30 and 301, alerting drivers to the traffic change on the 23rd in that area. Those same 15 signs will then be moved for the day of the event to cover the road closure for that part of the track. On September 23rd, we can expect a soft road closure starting at 11 a.m. in the morning with hard or no traffic going down 3301 on the course at 12 o'clock. VDOT will be putting various barriers out there, snow fence in certain areas, hard barriers in other. We've asked that they put one traffic cone in each driveway that touches the course as a visual reminder to those residents that have a house along that course that there's something going on. They've agreed to do that. For us, the Sheriff's Office, State Police, and VDOT will have a unified command center at the Frog Level Fire Station on the 2nd floor, which is our backup EOC, gives us an opportunity to practice that. Our command and area command will be part of a greater Hanover County command, which is part of the regional command, which is downtown Richmond. From that flow chart or that ICS model, we're able to get special services in there if we need to, bomb sniffing dogs or other resources if something goes wrong. UCI is publishing that the roads will reopen at 4:30, okay, but they're also publishing the race will end at 3:30. So we're anticipating, hopefully in Caroline County, we should see some staggered road openings of 30 and 301. We're hoping around 3 o'clock, and that will facilitate getting buses back to where they need to be to drop kids off for school. If for some reason that timeline changes, that is one issue we know that will be backed up is the school bus issue, and we're working with JD to try to find some alternate routes for that. With that, the last real open thing for us in general is the public outreach. We can discuss that when the sheriff gets done speaking. In our packet, we gave you where fire rescue resources will be, how many will be needed. The cost of those resources has been submitted to the sheriff's office to be submitted to UCI, which is about $2,100 for those costs. And again, that's an estimate. We don't know how many volunteer people we're going to get to cover some of those slots and how many people would be on straight time or overtime. So that's an estimate for us at this point. But with that, I'll turn it over to Sheriff or Lieutenant Carey.
Thank you, Chief. I'm only going to be a few minutes because we just got, like the Chief said, the numbers for them along with the Sheriff's Office personnel, and it's going to come up to approximately $7,908. So before the board, I believe Mr. Parton is going to get with Mr. Cully, draft up the letter both for the Chief and I to sign. And to get y'all's approval, I would suggest that we, get the monies up front somewhere around September 1st, or no later than the week after that, because should they close the road and we choose not to, or y'all choose not to use county funds for this, then the state police would have to handle it. And if you have any questions about the race itself, Lieutenant Carey is here because he's attended all the meetings. Something I heard tonight about the cones being placed at every driveway, and I know, Mr. Underwood, when we were at yours, that gentleman told us they would have volunteers at everyone. It's a whole lot of difference between a volunteer now and a cone there. So we'll address that issue again.
Okay, board members have questions for the sheriff?
I think the one thing, Mr. Chairman, the one thing to make sure is you and Chief Loftus both said all of these costs for local personnel will go to UCI, who will reimburse us or pay us ahead of time.
That's what we're hoping.
Okay. Well, that was a little different than what the original promoter said because he wanted a partnership at first. So I think this is at least a good plan. But if we're not paid and we don't use county resources, then you said the state police would be required, or what?
Mr. Cully.
Well, clearly, I brought this to your attention, several months ago because normally when a road gets closed, the state police first sergeant and the sheriff and I have to sign a permit for VDOT to affect that closure. And I had told VDOT at one of the race meetings in Richmond, I wasn't signing any permit if it was coming to my desk until the board had authorized me to, because it could inconvenience a lot of folks. So that's what sort of got the race people here talking to us about this to begin with. And then that's when they kind of indicated, well, we'd like to partner. But since that time, and we're at a community meeting in Dawn, it kind of led us to believe that they recognized that our economic benefit wasn't Henrico's in the city of Richmond or Hanover's, and that they would look at covering our cost. So I assume the governor closed the road. I mean, that's just an assumption, and they won't ask us to sign any permits or do anything. And if the sheriff doesn't agree to go down there and block off all the intersections, I assume the state police or the National Guard or whoever the governor decides he wants to use would have to affect that. Where our problem lies is Chief Loftus is going to still have to pre-position his folks, because it's not the race folks that we're worried about now. If we have somebody who has a heart attack or a stroke or has some issues down there and the roads are all jammed all up, we've got to have already thought how we're going to affect transport and moving those people. So that the chief's plan is to protect our citizens. The sheriff's plan is to block all the roads off to protect the racers. So it's two different things in the plan. So if we don't get funding, we're going to still be out the 2,100 estimate that the chief has, plus all of the senior staff time from the sheriff's department, the chief, the deputy chief, myself, that have been involved in these meetings over the last several months that we haven't been reimbursed for. But clearly the large cost will be the sheriff's department. And I guess that would just have to be covered by state troopers if they all make the decision that you don't want him to do it if we don't get reimbursed. And that's clearly going to be our best bet at get it being reimbursed, as the board says right up front. We're not putting all these sheriff's resources out, paying them all overtime, pulling them from everywhere to get this done. We have a big county to take care of. Fire and rescue, we're going to have to do what we have to do.
That's why we have 19 fire and rescue people scheduled for this. But Joe's house is right near, and Ms. Lambert's, they're right near the state fair. So you got to have somebody right near the state fair, but the other person that lives halfway on the other side of Route 30, you got to have somebody at each of these cones.
And again, now, when we talked to them and we had this plan that was there was an alternate plan not to come through Caroline County at all. And because of that, they found it more beneficial to pay the county up front to handle this route. Now, again, we're going to take care of our citizens. I want you all to understand that. I'm just looking for the money up front. So it takes care of it. We're going to be there with at least 23 of our personnel.
But Tony, my question, and I think Floyd's kind of alluding to it, how will we let the residents give them information to make sure